guys. So this is Sheloman Byrd. He's our executive producer at WB Games on MultiVersus. So we have just about 10 minutes. If we can,
I love this. Boys on one table and girls on the other.
if we can maybe start over here and just go around, if that's all right.
Attempted injury under the table. Oh yeah, I'm fine.
How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing good. When this game came together, how did you decide on what characters you wanted to use?
So typically, whenever we're putting character lists in the choosing and picking process, we don't just look at, hey, what's the most popular. We tend to actually look at both diversity, inclusion. We look at gender. We look at sort of who's actually coming, and of course, overall kind of fan opinion of who, hey, we want, for instance, Mordecai or Rigby, et cetera. So it's not just one metric we use to put together, it's actually a host of them. So when we talk about like the current sort of cast, and we announce the current cast, we know there were a lot of, wait, why did they pick this person instead of this person? It's like, well, again, the full gamut of Warner IP has a lot of representation in it. As a live service game, it's not necessary that we add everyone in on the first day versus understanding a path to get to every character that fans actually
Tony Soprano, huh?
Tony Soprano is an interesting one. I will simply say that, obviously, yes, we've seen The Sopranos.
DLC, right?
We've argued back and forth about the ending and all that wonderful stuff. But, it's interesting. Obviously, we're not going to say anything about anything that's coming in the future. So it's good stuff.
With the plans of releasing people, what's the final number that you have come up with?
So this is actually a good point because we see a lot of chatter about that online. There's not really a number that we're like, yep, once we get to this one, it said, think of it like this. If there's, obviously Warner is not going to stop releasing films or television shows anytime soon. We look at it as a case where the game is sort of being able to grow with new shows, new content, as well as being able to have all of our nostalgic IPs. That's kind of the path forward overall. So expect a lot of new content, expect a lot of old content, expect a lot of spliced content, things like that. So pretty cool.
I guess what was your? I guess when y'all got the power to pretty much put any character you want in the game, what was kind of the end game for all this? I mean, obviously this is like a continuous thing that's going to be over years. Like
how many characters? Or
not even how many characters, but like what is? I mean, licenses and stuff play a big factor in this type of game, which put a lot of limitations on it.
Yep.
But where does it stop? I guess like does it stop at DC? It's just like all over.
So right now we have, let's see, DC. Barbara, Cartoon Network, Game of Thrones, LeBron, then Space Jam. That's already a pretty good gamut. We don't see a real reason to say, oh, only cartoons or only this or only that. If there's someone out there that really wants to play as this person, okay, let's actually take a look at what that actually means. That doesn't necessarily mean that every character in the history of fiction will end up in MultiVersus. But it does mean we're going to try and get a lot of them.
So building on that, I was going to ask if you have LeBron in there, and I was going to ask, is it more complicated to bring a flesh-and-blood person into the game? And then my second one is, I got to ask, any chance we're going to see Jordan for the epic LeBron Jordan?
I thought you said Joker instead of Jordan for a second, and I was like, wait a minute. So understanding that. So first, Ron obviously represents a completely different paradigm in terms of a character being brought into a fighter. He's a real-life fighter. He's one of the greatest baseball players to pick the ball. In Space Jam, it's just his skill set sort of translated to that film. The way we kind of look at it is that at his core, like at his soul as a character, like what he's here for is making his team better. That's his friends, that's the folks around him, that's the school in Akron, that's everything else. He means we get to work together as a team. Figuring out that, and just pretty much making that the kind of essence of his character and translating that over, that pretty much that was the tricky part in terms of how do we make sure this person who is unbelievable at basketball can deal with somebody who's throwing batarangs at all moments of the day. understanding that, we think we actually have a very, very compelling answer. So we're pretty happy with that. For the second part of your question, no comment. I'll say this: I'm a Lakers fan, so I mean, yeah. I'll just leave it at that and say it's a good time.
So there's been a lot of talk of characters. Has there been any one character you want to get, and for some reason just no, you got a hard no until not really in the future?
No.
So the entire Warner Brothers, all that entire catalog.
So when we say the entire catalog, like that's a lot. So it's like
you could just randomly have Blue or show up for whatever reason. Like I'm saying, like if there's one character where you're just like, no, I'm just not looking at it.
no, I mean I'll say that.
Casablanca DLC.
I'll say that obviously, when it comes to fan expectations, we've seen, I think, actually every character suggested for the game, like at this point in some way, shape, or form. The best way I can say it is that the full sort of range is open. Not necessarily every IP will be represented in a character format. So you will have stuff like Yosemite Sam's in game now, but he's a ring out. And that's something you can get and unlock. That interaction is fun, and it's like, oh, you see what he's famous for, which is firing the pistols in the air at your feet. That's pretty much it for the most part. I think if you look at that as a good blueprint, it's easy to see how a lot of different IP will actually show up in different forms.
When the characters or their abilities were designed, was it taken into consideration like which character might work well with the other in the team?
That is the core of pretty much every character. Like everyone has to have a skill to work with someone else. So the pillar, like again, the main pillar of the game is built around co-op and 2v2 play. Like obviously we have 1v1 characters, we find 1v1, we have free for all, but you and I getting together, you together, that's the soul of it. So every character having something where if I'm summoning something as Wonder Woman, my shield is shield you too. All right, let's go get it. You see us coming. Hey, guess what? I'm going to turn into a bouncy house. You can bounce me and try to hit us from the air. That interaction and that sandbox all the time, that pretty much is the soul of what we were aiming for. So as we look at it, it's a sandbox that we can just keep adding more toys into. So that's pretty much the way we're pretty excited.
How long does it take to put so many things together? Like, the script to like put it in the
So it's variable. I'll say the design of the character always starts from a base form. So the art process, sketches, that's discussion, etc. Overall, it's a variable amount of time. It can take a few months. Some characters will take longer than that. Some characters will take shorter than that. But it is a case where getting the authenticity right at the end, that doesn't have a set timetable to actually sort of get it. So it is a case where some characters get there faster than others, like the Iron Giant took a really long time in terms of to be able to get there to deliver a kit that both is true to the soul of the film, true to the soul of the actual hero, but also why now he's sort of in game and actually doing it. So understanding all those things and how they will sort of add to the roster can take a little bit more time, but we generally regard the end of that process as like when they're ready, so to speak. There's not a there's no he has to come out by the news. Like we don't plan like that. It's more like, is this character ready? Will the fans actually enjoy it? Yes. Okay. Let's go on.
How do you come up with the move sets for some of these characters? There's characters like Superman, Batman, that might be a little obvious. Once you get into Shaggy and like Adventure Time, stuff like that, does it get a little bit more difficult, or do you guys have an idea of what you want to do going there?
So, Tony touched on this a little bit in the panel, but functionally every single character has to fulfill like a game design need, a game design reason. Like, the character is not just going to be, hey, he's in, and that's it. It's, what need does this player, what does this need does this character actually have that's going to actually serve the player base, and how does this actually relate to bigger pillars for the actual time? So, Batman, for instance, brought him up. Yep, super straightforward in terms of what has been seen out there. Like now, Velma, who has teamed up with Batman before, she's not gonna like that's not Velma's thing. Velma's thing is her brain. All right, what does that actually mean? I mean, she's going to outthink you, all right? What's the literal version of how you outthink someone? Throw words at me. So the way that sort of the team actually gets to that creative process, it's like that for every character. So while they'll be, and it's one of those things where we just take our time to make sure that it's really there and it's really set. But when we said like, no, we don't want echo fighters or anything like that, that's what that means to us, is that every fighter is bringing something different to the table and can build on something with someone else.
Last night at the Harley Quinn Season 3 premiere, Ron Funches was talking about this game. Has this already trickled to you?
So we got asked a question in the panel we were just at, and they mentioned it. Yeah.
Okay, so...
Is this the King Shark thing?
Yeah. I spoke to him after the panel. I said, I'll talk to them tomorrow, but, you know. So let me be person number 7 to harass you about it then.
All right. So I will say this. I'll just say that obviously King Shark is in Harley Quinn. We are big fans of that character, and I watched that show. I will leave it at that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Casablanca DLC.
Deep blue sea.